But is the storm organized enough to be a considerable threat? Will it even become a hurricane? We're live here on Tracking the Tropics to look closer at the latest models here with our meteorologist joining us as always. I'm WFLA digital anchor JB Buno, and on the right side of your screen, WFLA featured meteorologist of the day, Ian Oliver, and then Storm Team 8 meteorologist as well, Amanda Holly on the left side of your screen. I'm the guy to make sure that they do not get too much into the technical weather jargon here as we are talking about Tropical Storm Dorian barreling into the Caribbean. We're going to get to Ian here in just a second, but everybody, let's start with meteorologist Amanda Holly here live with us in front of the wall, letting us know exactly what's going on out there. Hey there, Amanda.
Hey there, JB. Yeah, we've been tracking, Tropical Storm Dorian as well as now Tropical Depression 6 out in the Atlantic. And of course, all eyes are on Dorian at this point, with Florida now in the cone of uncertainty, that official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. But we're going to continue to see slight movements over the next couple of days. And really, the next 2 to 3 days are going to be crucial to see where this storm will end up at days 5 and 6. So that would make us into Labor Day. But right now, as of the 11 a.m. advisory, again, we'll probably get another update here in the next 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll update you when that comes in. But for now, the last advisory came in at 11 a.m. Those winds sustained at 50 miles per hour, so that's lower than what it was yesterday. The storm is not looking that impressive still here. You can see the cloud tops, the colors, they kind of waned a little bit. That means those cloud tops are warming or they're a little lower. The convection is not as robust, but it is still moving west-northwest at 13 miles per hour as of 11 a.m. But when you'll hear us talk in a few minutes, Ian and I were looking at earlier the motion here. It actually looks like it's moving a little bit further to the north than it is to the west at this point. We'll see what the National Hurricane Center does here in the next few minutes, but otherwise on satellite you can see here it did have a kind of a symmetrical look there the first couple of hours, and then the last half of this loop you can see there's a nice little dry slot there, and that's actually some dry air intruding. This storm also went directly over the island of St. Lucia and kind of ripped the inner core apart a little bit, which is good news for us in the long term. The weaker the storm can stay now, the less time it will have to regain some strength. But it's going to continue to move through the Caribbean over the next couple of days and then move in between the Dominican and Puerto Rico here. And this will be crucial to see exactly where it will move within this track over the next two or 3 days. This is Thursday at 8 a.m. Then it will reemerge north of those islands, move through the Bahamas, which does have some very warm waters under it. And then after that, of course, all eyes are on where it will move in days 5 and 6 on Sunday and maybe into Monday as well. Now the cone again does have Florida, the peninsula of Florida in the cone, so we are going to be watching this, and some impacts are becoming a little bit more possible. We just don't know what those impacts are at this point because it is really going to be crucial where Dorian moves in between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. This span here, that is a almost 300-mile span, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't seem like a whole lot, when it's got all this way to go. But with the nature of these islands, it's actually pretty important because one of the islands is very mountainous, and if it moves over that island, it would tear the storm apart and not have that much time to re-strengthen after it reemerges. But if it can go directly in between the islands here, that would allow the storm to stay intact a little bit more. So certainly something we're going to be watching over the coming days. Again, that would be Wednesday, Thursday time frame. But otherwise, the track forecast has a little bit higher confidence than that intensity forecast. Models are kind of all over the place at this point. The National Hurricane Center saying that they don't really know why our global models aren't making it a little stronger. The other environmental factors should all point to really strengthening at this point, but the global model's keeping it a little on the weaker side. So again, that intensity forecast, low confidence at this point. Something that we are going to keep an eye on. The near term, though, those tropical storm watches and warnings in effect for some of those Caribbean islands. We do have a hurricane watch in effect as well, but the official forecast does not have Dorian becoming a hurricane right now because it is a little bit weaker. Again, we're also keeping an eye on Tropical Depression 6 out here, not really a threat to the United States at all, sitting well out in the Atlantic, winds at 35 miles per hour. You can see movement very, very slow, and it's going to continue to move off to the north. Again, not affecting the United States, staying off the coastline there and dissipating by Friday and Saturday. Good news for us, but for now, of course, all eyes are on Dorian again as it moves through the Caribbean, and we'll be watching to see where it goes in between the Dominican and Puerto Rico. I'll send it back to you, JB and Ian.
Storm teammate meteorologist Amanda Holly with our latest Dorian update. Thank you, Amanda. Ian, Storm Team 8 meteorologist. I want to bring you in here as well to kind of get your perspective as we are talking here about Tropical Storm Dorian. We've seen the narrative here shift a little bit. We do not expect this to become a hurricane, though anything can happen at this time, right?
Yeah, JB, good afternoon. This has been a very interesting storm to track through the weekend and through the early part of this week. Specifically over the last 12 hours, they have not been friendly to Dorian over the last several hours. We've been seeing pulsing convection with the storm, kind of a variable intensity related to the thunderstorms towards the inner core of the storm. That has had everything to do with the dry air that's been surrounding the system. Then, of course, today, sadly, as Amanda pointed out, the system moved directly over St. Lucia, brought with it some tropical storm conditions there. Highest peak in St. Lucia is actually about 3,000 miles, so that when the hurricane hunters flew into it, which has also been critical for our forecasting here in the short term. Since last night, we've started to get regular fixes of the hurricane hunters flying into the system and investigating it. When they flew into it this morning, what they found was a tropical system that was struggling in large part because of the impacts with terrain, some of those that were forecasting that to happen once again once it moves towards Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. But what happened was that inner core, which had been fairly well defined and protected itself a little bit from the dry air that's been surrounding this thing the whole time, that inner core was significantly disrupted by the terrain of St. Lucia. Again, it was a direct hit across that island. When it emerged on the opposite side, the western side of St. Lucia, that inner core had broken down significantly, and then the hurricane hunters actually struggled a touch to define where exactly that center of circulation actually was at that point. They did later find that with another several passes through the center of this system. That has allowed a little bit of extra dry air to punch into the system, and you can actually see that. What we're looking at here is the water vapor imagery. You look directly at the southern side of the system, some of that blue, which indicates lesser atmospheric moisture as opposed to the bright greens that you see there, it's punching in almost a little dry slot on the south side of this circulation, and there's not going to be much relief in terms of the dry air in the short term. If you look at where the system is heading, which we'll talk more about its direction coming up here, it's headed towards that sliver near Puerto Rico and the Dominican. That's really dry air, the reds and the oranges that you see. So that in the short term is definitely going to be an inhibitor towards either maintaining intensity or intensifying towards a hurricane. That's why the National Hurricane Center, that forecast no longer has it reaching a hurricane status, in large part to some of that land interaction and the dry air kind of doing its thing on the storm, unfortunately, doing what dry air does to tropical systems. One more feature to point out is that upper level low that is off to the north of the system. That
a swirl there.
Yes, and that's eventually could shear the storm a little bit. It doesn't look like it's a very strong upper level low, but what it's act to do is the subtropical ridge is basically what's been steering that system off to the west. It weakened that ridge a little bit, and that's going to allow the system to get a little bit farther north. These are all subtle things, but when we're talking about a track forecast, the most important point is point zero. Where is this thing? Yeah, where is it moving in the short term? That has everything to do with where it goes long term. So these subtle little things, big impacts long term.
Big impacts long term, and of course everybody wants to know long term. The big question, where will it be, in 5 days from now, Labor Day weekend? But like we were talking about earlier, it's just hard to say at this point. There's a lot of those little factors that add up to be big factors in the long run. One thing that this storm does have going for it is the warm water temperatures, and we've been talking about that, kind of all season long. The sea surface temperatures. When
you say a good thing going for it, you mean for intensifying or getting stronger?
Correct. Yes. Tropical systems like warm water, that's kind of their fuel. That's their engine, the fuel that, fills their engine and keeps them going based on, or I guess not including any of other factors. If it just had warm water, it would be really good to go. And it's got plenty. You can see the track overlaid. All of those oranges, that's warmer than average temperatures.
Yeah, we talked about the worst case scenario. This is a tiny storm system we're talking about. You look at this map, it's a wide view of the Caribbean, the tropical Atlantic up into the Gulf. You're like, that island is really small.
Yeah.
This storm is really small. The inner core is very small, and it passed directly over one of those islands, St. Lucia.
One of those small islands, and it did something to the center.
That is a key part of this. So worst case scenario in terms of intensification would have been for it to move through the Windward Islands, the middle part of the Lesser Antilles, make it into the northeastern Caribbean, where the wind shear, low to moderate at best, not a bad environment for intensification, and shooting the gap in between Puerto Rico and the Dominican.
That's possible.
That would have been the worst case scenario. We already haven't seen that because of the land interaction that's already taken place. Which at least in the timing is always critical. How much time can these storms spend in ripe environments for intensification? We've essentially stripped, at least 12 hours away, probably more than that, from that interaction that happened with St. Lucia. So now we have to start looking downstream and see what those impacts are, where it's heading long term.
Right, where it will end up.
Going around the clock here, everybody. In the top left-hand portion of your screen, Storm Team 8 meteorologist Amanda Holly. Top right, Storm Team 8 meteorologist Ian Oliver. I'm WFLA digital anchor JB Puno. The bottom left-hand portion of your screen, you see we are streaming live here from the Stream Center at WFLA in Tampa Bay. And that's when we're going to bring the interactive part of this in, where we're going to be taking your questions here live from WFLA's Facebook page. I know that we're streaming to 6 states across the southeastern United States, and television stations and apps and Facebook pages, and we're everywhere. But we're going to be taking questions live from the WFLA Facebook page. So if you're live with us on WFLA's Facebook page, ask us a question. We're going to be reading through some of your questions and comments. I'm going to get to just a few of them here, guys. Joel says good afternoon from Largo.
All right.
We got Williams joining us from Lakeland. We've got Gwen and Tatum joining us from Mayaca City. And again, everybody, let us know where you're watching from, and also be sure to ask us some questions, because we're going to be getting to some of them here. Anne Marie says that she's joining us from Tampa, Florida. And Jeannie saying Lake Placid, Florida, as well as Tiffany Parker from Sarasota. Sorry, guys, they're coming in so fast, as you guys know that they do here on Facebook Live.
Coming.
They're just a lot of questions. Actually,
Fast and furious.
Here's a question from WFLA top fan Frank Washburn. He says, what do the various tracking models predict? I don't know if he's referring to the spaghetti models or not, but how do the spaghetti models look, guys? Do they look pretty concise, or do they look pretty spread out?
Let's point those out.
It's a good question. These are our spaghetti plots, or our forecast models, all the different ones that take all of those little factors that we were just talking about into consideration. And they provide us they give us a good outlook of where the storm may go based on all the current factors. They take in the Hurricane Hunter data, and they look at all the wind shear, they look at the sea surface temperatures, they look at that upper level low, the position of that, and they kind of say, well, from now, what do we think is going to happen, in 5 days from now? And this is what we're looking at. And this is pretty good. Normally, we would say this is very close to agreement. All the models, have it generally moving in this northwestward track towards, the southeast United States, unfortunately. But those arrows point out, in this storm particular, this is going to be key. Again, that's about between those arrows is about 250 to 300 miles difference. And again, if it takes the left course, it's going to go over the mountains there. If it takes the right course, it's going to stay, possibly over the warmer waters and stay a little stronger.
So all this gets factored in. That's how the National Hurricane Center is actually going to generate the cone. And could we pull the cone up? We'll talk a little bit about that, what that means long term. It's important to point these things out, because the average error at day 5 in 2017 by the National Hurricane Center, day 5 error is about 200 miles across. That's what we're talking about from the left side to the right side of the cone. Usually, it's funny because this is kind of flipping the script a little bit. Usually we're on television, we're screaming, don't pay attention just to the track or the cone. Impacts can be felt outside of the cone. That's usually the case. This storm is tiny, and you have to consider where we're at with this storm. We're on here just to bring you the latest information. It's Tuesday. You go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're talking about day 5, the end of that cone, 200 miles in error. Tropical storm force winds with this system extend out 45 miles. So it's entirely plausible, like we are in the cone of uncertainty, areas in the cone are going to feel 0 impacts from Dorian. On the flip side, it's also possible that areas in the cone are going to see tropical storm impacts. Perhaps that's still unclear. I think when we'll get a really clear picture as far as impacts go, where does this system go over the next few days? Once it's on the opposite side of Hispaniola, the Dominican and Puerto Rico, and we can see what kind of shape it's in, which might be really bad if it can maintain its intensity through there. Now it's in an environment in the Bahamas where it can kind of get its act together a little bit. Where it goes from there would obviously be very important, but how strong this system is also tied to where it's heading. we have seen a little bit. We should show them that with the visible satellite imagery.
I only have infrared here.
And that's why it's a good opportunity, Ian, to point out that we're going to be streaming here every day this week at 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central here on Tracking the Tropics with the very latest on what we know about Dorian and where it's heading. Guys, are you guys ready for some rapid fire questions? Because my call for questions was quite successful.
Here we go.
We got a lot of questions coming in, so let's try to answer these as quickly as possible and give as many people in the comment section here on WFLA's Facebook page a shout out. We're going to start with Mike Mader. How long is this tropical storm going to be in effect, is his question.
Tropical storm.
Dorian, how long is it going to be a tropical storm, I guess is what he's asking.
Well, right now the official forecast is for it to remain a tropical storm for at least the next 5 days as it approaches potentially the southeast United States. Now, after that, if it makes interaction with land, at day 5 on Sunday, it would weaken. If it stays out open over the Atlantic and takes a more northerly track, it could stick around for a little bit longer, but we just don't know right now.
Angelique wants to know worries for Daytona Beach.
Worries, no. Should you be vigilant? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have that hurricane plan in place. You have your supplies. Yeah, I would, it's hurricane
There's an increasing likelihood that we could see some impacts. Like even if this system was shredded, that tropical moisture still is going to go somewhere. It would enhance rain chances. So I know with the holiday weekend, everyone wants to know what's going to happen with this.
Right.
The short answer is it's too early to say.
Tina from St. Pete, she wants to know what impacts the Tampa Bay area will face if it continues the current path. Specific question. If it continues the current path, Tampa Bay, implications, guys? Short answer?
I would say enhanced rain chances, maybe a bit of wind at this point.
Breezier winds,
and really to say more than that at this point is...
It would be guessing.
Yes, it wouldn't be fair. It's important to talk about what we're confident in, what we know, and it's important to point out what we don't know, and that's why we track these systems, and we'll be repeatedly bringing you these updates.
Yeah. Renee asking a very important question about air travel this weekend, guys. She says, I fly back home from Wisconsin to Clearwater on Saturday. I won't get caught in it, will I? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. A lot of question marks there from Renee. What do we got? What
she really wants to know.
Yeah.
No.
Saturday,
I would think
you'd be okay in Clearwater.
Yeah.
Okay, good news for you, Renee. Hey, Cindy wants to know what the storm impact will be on the Palm Coast.
Basically same as what we said. Enhanced rain chances, a little bit of wind at this point.
And if you're on the east coast of Florida, you're probably going to have some slightly higher rain chances than the west coast.
Christine Mears with a great question that I sometimes ask on Tracking the Tropics when we're talking about these storms. She wants to know, is this more of a wind event, rain event, or both? Great question from Christine.
Very good question. Yeah, I would say this would be more of a rain event.
I would agree with that, yes.
And the impacts, it is a small storm. Keep in mind, we keep talking about how far those winds extend out from the center, and they're not very far.
Sissy asking in the comments section, we went from air travel, how about boat travel? Just she's leaving on a cruise on Wednesday from New York to the Caribbean. So I've done that. So New York, leaving from New York and then making it down to the Caribbean, that's usually like a 6-7 day cruise. So
on what day was this?
She's leaving Wednesday. I think you'll be
tomorrow.
fine. By the time, we're talking about the storm being over Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic on Thursday morning. And if you're just leaving New York, you'll have plenty of sailing time to get there.
No, right, is that you're heading to the Caribbean.
You'll have to probably skirt around.
Well, the issue is Tropical Depression 6.
That too, but they could probably go on the inside.
I would say that they'll have to adjust it. Maybe a little bit of extra chop, which my wife and I were on a cruise. We ran into some extra chop, and she was not so excited about that. So hopefully that can be avoided. But like you said, probably.
I don't think they'll cancel.
No.
Trip,
but I would think maybe some adjustments necessary there. Yeah.
Abby has a question about current conditions. She says, "Hey, is there anyone out there right now in Plant City? This storm right now is crazy. LOL. Is it storming right now in Plant City?
We do have some storms
back
out there.
In the onshore flow. It's muggy. Showers and storms start early. Locally, if you're watching from the Tampa Bay area, we're stuck in this. Not for 3 weeks like we were to get August started, but through at least Thursday. Looks like Friday. This breaks on down.
Renee says thank you for the cruise advice, guys. She says great, thank you.
Cruise is a good time regardless. So even you can't miss.
Sometimes it storms. That's just what happens. WFLA top fan Robert Smith. Hey, he wants to be at Disney Sunday. What do we tell him?
Sunday. Definitely, there will definitely be rain in the forecast.
Yes.
It'll be a rainy day, is what we could
There's still some question marks, but
Hopefully the system diminishes. Maybe it knocks down the crowds a little bit. Galaxy's Edge opening up. Maybe that's where he's heading. Wait and see. At this point, I would say you'd have a much better idea by Thursday, Friday especially. You'll know absolutely.
One of our top fans, Vicky, wants to know about one of my favorite places in the entire universe, and that's Key West. Key West, of course, the most southern point here in the continental United States, a little bit at the end of the Keys. What do we tell her about Key West?
I'd say the latest look at the forecast models. We've been watching this thing make a little jog to the north. That's great news. North side, or the right side, if you imagine those spaghetti models again, or the cone, the right side would take it a little bit farther away from Key West. But again, there's still a ton of uncertainty.
And there's a lot of time for things to change too. Some of those models, taking a little bit further out in the Atlantic right now. But this morning we saw, one go a little further south too. So
yeah, and just to quickly point that out, if you look at this satellite picture, the middle of the screen,
let's go full screen, guys.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about that dry slot earlier in our broadcast. But if you look at the center point of that, its motion was west-northwest at 13 miles per hour. In fact, that's the 2 o'clock advisory.
There it is.
The component of northward motion, at least the strongest convection, has wobbled considerably to the north. So that might pull the eventual track a little bit closer to the right side of those spaghetti plots or that cone. It would take a track more towards Puerto Rico than Hispaniola at this point.
Correct.
It would be more along the lines of Puerto Rico than the Dominican. So that's something we'll wait and see. As I mentioned, the hurricane hunters were in it this morning. They're running 6-hour fixes now. They're going to be sampling this system every 6 hours. All that data gets ingested into the forecast models, and every little bit helps out, lets them paint a little bit more of a clearer picture of where the system is heading. So that long term, that's going to help us out considerably.
So a couple more guys. I love the funny comments too. Sometimes you gotta have a laugh. Phil McCracken says, "Hide your wife, hide the kids."
Release the Kraken.
Release the Kraken. There you go. That's just for you, Phil. Meg and Max are asking, are they going to issue any tropical storm watches for the Bay Area? So watches, warning. What can we tell Meg and Max there?
That would not happen until the end of the week. If we start to, potentially see impacts here in Florida, that wouldn't happen until the end of the week.
Yeah, perhaps for South Florida. Don't expect across the Tampa Bay area that to happen anytime soon. Probably at least 3 days, if it happens.
Yolanda is telling other people in the comments that it is too early to determine the impact for Florida. She's got her meteorologist hat on. Is that an accurate
She's
statement?
absolutely correct.
Yep.
We like that.
Yep. Let's see here.
Doing the Lord's work in the comments. Comment section.
Jordan is characterizing. He also has his meteorologist hat on, and Jordan Padron, I believe is how you would say that. He says this is one weird storm. Ian, I think that you've kind of been alluding to this being a little bit of an uncharacteristic tropical storm. Would you agree with
Sure.
weird?
Yeah, it's funky in the sense that it's very tiny. And it's been surviving somehow in an environment where it's a tropical system that hates dry air. The only thing this thing has had around since it was, born, if you want to, since its genesis on Saturday, is a whole lot of dry air. But that tiny circulation has kind of been able to fight that off. Short term, it's been getting bullied by that dry air and the land interaction. And we look at the ragged satellite presentation, and we can see that. But it's hanging in there, and we're just got to wait and see. We've been tracking this system since the beginning, and it's still the beginning, really.
Yeah.
Final two here. Deborah says, LOL, love you guys. I don't know if she was laughing at us or with us, but Deborah,
she's laughing. It's all good.
You're laughing.
We love you
So
too.
at least that we can provide a little bit of some entertainment as hopefully we're being more informative than entertaining, right? That's the whole purpose of tracking the tropics here. But it's good to have fun with you guys here live on stream. And then Anne Marie Adams asking this question from about a few minutes ago, but it's a huge emphatic yes, Anne Marie. Her question was, as the storm gets closer to Florida, will you be expanding your Facebook Live coverage? Ding ding ding, yes. We're not only will we be expanding our coverage here on Facebook Live and on our website and our app and on air, but we'll be expanding it on our website, our app, and on air and everywhere that you think that you could find out information about this storm as far as WFLA is concerned. It will be there. And if you're watching on another site or app or social media platform for another television station within our group here connected to the WFLA. This app, this website, this social media platform, there will be updates. But as far as us go, we'll be doing it up for Florida, right, you guys?
Mm-hmm. We will be here.
Any final notes here, guys? I'm gonna bring you guys up here on our split look here. Any final notes about Tropical Storm Dorian entering the Caribbean, heading potentially our way before we wrap up here?
It's just early to say right now. We're going to be watching it over the next couple of days. Thursday time frame will be key.
Yeah, it's kind of in rough shape right now.
Yeah.
We've talked about all the reasons why. There's a possibility it bounces back from this.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that overall forecast from the Hurricane Center down a bit. It was forecast to reach Category 1 hurricane intensity. Now it's not. Still forecast to be a high-end tropical storm. We hope wind shear, dry air, all those things do their work on the system and weaken it as much as possible. And we'll be tracking it every step of the way.
All right, everybody. Again, we'll go clockways around. Amanda Holly, storm teammate meteorologist, in the top left of your screen. Of course, her storm teammate colleague, Ian Oliver. In the top right, I'm WFLA digital anchor JB Buno. And as you see here in the bottom left, we are streaming here live from the Stream Center in Tampa, Florida. To everybody who joined us for Tracking the Tropics, we'll be back in about 23 and a half hours from now, that being 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central, right here on this website, app, or social media platform. Wherever you're joining us from now, we would imagine that we'll be back up here live tomorrow at this same time. Everybody, for Ian Oliver, Amanda Holly, I'm JB Buno. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.